Become a supporter for my Patreon to get access to all my tutorial project files, including the one you're watching right now. Welcome back everyone to another how to make a minigames game on Roblox. In this episode we are going to be creating a voting system so players will be able to vote for what games they want to be played next, and we're also going to be creating a new minigame which is going to be capture the flag, and in this game players are going to try to capture the other players' flags and return it to their own flag, and they'll have swords to defend their flag and fight off their enemies. And we're also going to be updating the spleef minigame and optimize it a little bit so it doesn't take forever to load. So first, we're going to make changes to our game handler script, and the first thing we do is we create a variable for voting event and update votes, which voting event is going to be a remote event inside of replicated storage inside of our events folder, and we're going to actually just make that right now. So I'll add a remote event and call this voting, and then we also get update votes, which is that's going to be a remote function. So I'm going to add a remote function and call it update votes. And then we also have a new variable called vote time, and that's going to be how long the players have to vote. And down here we're also going to get rid of this, because instead of choosing a random mini game, we're going to now make it a voting selection. So we delete that, and we also turned this chosen game module into, we're going to equal it to nil instead of a random game. And then we're also going to this dev product part right here, instead of it just ending off right here, we're going to make an else statement. So if someone decided to purchase what the next game should be with the dev product, then that will override the vote and it'll just immediately go into that mini game. Or if there is no mini games in the queue, then we're going to have our voting happen. So if our voting is going to happen, we first get a local variable for game votes, player votes, and selected games, and then we also get a new variable for all of our mini games. Then we're going to iterate 3 times, so we're going to have 3 different games to choose from. We're going to get a chosen game, which is going to just be random. We're going to remove it from the games table, and we're going to insert it into the selected games table with a name that's going to equal the chosen game.name, and an image which is going to equal the chosen game, and then get attribute image, which we haven't put any images on these module scripts. You're going to need to go to each of your module scripts or each of your mini games, and you're going to need to go to attributes and add a new one, and you'll just call it img, give it a string. Then you're going to give it an image link, so when the players are voting for what map they want, there's going to be an image of each of the games. So I've gone ahead and done that already. I've gone under each of my module scripts for the mini games, and I've given it an img attribute and then given it the link for each of the images. And then we also update game votes with the key of the chosen game.name equal to 0. And then with our selected games, we're going to fire the voting event onto all the clients and giving them the selected games variable so they know what games they're allowed to vote for. And now that the players are voting, we need to update the server anytime a player votes. We do that by equaling the on-server invoke for our update votes remote function to a function, and we get the player and the vote that they are trying to vote for, and if there is a vote, then we need to update it, and if there's not, then we're just going to skip that and just return the voting data. But if they have a vote, we need to verify that their vote is valid. So we first get their game module, and if it doesn't exist or it's not a votable map, then we need to warn to the server that whatever they tried voting for is not a votable minigame, and then we return the game votes. But if that has been verified, then we need to see if the player has an already existing vote or if this is their first time voting. We check to see inside the player votes that if there is a key of the player's user ID, and if there is, then we need to go into the game votes with that player vote and minus it by 1. So we remove the vote from the map that they previously voted for, and then we update their vote to be the vote that they are now voting for, and we increase the game votes by 1. And now we need to give the players some time to vote, so we just have a countdown that's going to last for however long the vote time is, and just continuously update the game status value, telling them that they need to vote and how much time is left. After the countdown finishes, we fire to all of the clients with our voting event with the nil argument telling all the clients that the voting is over. And we also make the on-server invoke for our remote function equal to nil, so nothing happens when players try to invoke the server with this function. And now that the voting has finished, we need to find the game with the highest amount of votes. So we have a default variable, which is highest votes equal to 0. And then we're going to loop through the game votes variable, which gives us the name and the amount of votes that that game got. And if the votes that that game got is greater or equal to the highest votes, then we're gonna switch our chosen game module to the new game, and we're also gonna make the highest votes variable equal to the votes, and then this will give us the game with the highest votes. Or if there's a tie, then it's just gonna choose the last one it finds that's tied up. And now we're gonna start working on our map voting. So go to the description and grab the GUI asset that I provided. It's going to look like this. It's going to be called voting frame. You're just going to want to put it in starter GUI, and it's going to look a little weird, but you're going to need to add a local script to the voting frame, actually to the main frame, and then call it voting client. And then there's this little folder here, voting client, which this little selected frame just goes inside the voting client, and we can delete that folder because it's just a placeholder, and you should get something that looks like this. So now for scripting our voting frame, we get the voting event and the remote function that are both in the events folder and replicated storage. We get the main frame, and we get this empty table voting columns, and we need to fill this empty table up with these 3 columns right here. These 3 image buttons need to be in that table, but there's also these other things that we don't want in there. So what we do is we just loop through our main frame, wait for child columns, and we get the children of that. And we loop through all of these, and if it's not an image button, then we're just going to skip over it. But if it is, we insert it into our table. And then we create some variables right here that are going to be used for our GUI animations. We get the default size, the selected size, which is just the default size, plus a few extra pixels, and then we get the selected border, and then we also have the animation time for when a map has been selected or unselected. And now if our voting event gets fired on the client, we're going to either receive a choices argument or not. And if we do receive a choices argument, then we know that we're actually starting the voting up and we have our choices to choose from, and we're going to make the main frame not visible equal to true. But if there's no choices and we're given nil, then we just close the frame because voting has ended. And now we need to render out all of our choices. So we're going to make an empty table called connections, and this is going to store all of the connections when we're clicking our image buttons. Then we're going to make sure that the selected border's parent is equal to script, just in case there was a previous voting and it's not inside the script. Then we're going to actually render out the choices. So we get our choices and we're going to loop through them, and we're going to get the choice table, which is going to be this right here with the name and the image attribute. And what we're going to do with it is we're just going to name our image button with the name of the choice. We're going to make the name label text equal to the choice's name. We're going to make the image to the choice's image. We're going to set the size to the default size if it isn't already. And then we're going to set the votes label text equal to 0 votes. And now we need to update the votes anytime someone actually clicks on one of the image buttons to vote. And we're just going to store this in a variable called vote connection. And it's going to be when our voting column gets activated, we're just going to connect it to a function. We're going to get the updates from the server, also giving it the choice.name, telling them that we also want to vote for a map. And then we're going to make the selected border.parent equal to the voting columns. And then we're going to make the selected border's parent equal to the game that we're trying to vote for. And then we're going to loop through all of our voting columns and update them to be if they're selected or not, and also update how many votes they have. So we get our column, we get the votes label, and we change this text to the updates, and then whatever the name of the game we're voting for, and then just votes, so we have the amount of votes it has. And then we need to know if it's selected or not, and if the column is equal to the column that we clicked, then we know it's the selected one, so we're going to play an animation for when it's selected. And then we're also going to play an animation for the unselected ones, so if there was one that was previously selected, there'll be an animation showing it go back down to an unselected form. So if the column's selected, we're going to tween its size to the selected size so it grows a little bit. We're going to give it some easing direction, which is going to be out, and then an easing style of back, so it's going to kind of pop out a little bit. We're going to give it our animation time, and then we're also going to make the override equal to true, so it will override the unselected animation if that happens to be playing. And for the unselected animation, we can pretty much copy this and just change a few things, and we can make this the default size. we can keep this to be out, and then we can change the easing style. If we wanted to, we could change it to something else, but I'm just going to do quad, and then we're going to keep the same animation time and then make this false so that this animation can override this one if this one's somehow playing at the same time. And we can actually test out our GUI. If we load in the game, we won't be able to test it fully, but we can see that we can select it with the animation that appears, and the GUI doesn't, the gradient doesn't spin, but we can see that we can select it, and it does show that we have one vote. And then we need to insert into the connections table our vote connection variable so that we can disconnect it later. And we also need to make it so if the player isn't constantly voting, they can still see if certain maps are being updated and who's voting for what. So we create a coroutine, and this is going to be called the update thread. And in this coroutine, we're just going to have while true do running. So it's going to run this every 0.6 seconds. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the updates from the server without giving any data because the user isn't voting. And then once we have that data, we're just going to go through all of our voting columns, and we're going to update the votes label text to be whatever the votes the game has. And now we need to actually run this coroutine, so we just use coroutine.resume and then give it our update thread, so we'll update it every 0.6 seconds. And then while the players are voting, we just need to wait until the server tells us that the voting has ended. So we just use on client event wait. So our code will literally just sit here and wait until this gets fired again on the client. And after that happens, we're going to close the coroutine so it's not trying to update the votes every 0.6 seconds. Then we're going to go through our connections that we made up here, and we're going to disconnect all of them. So later when we're doing another voting session, it's not going to have this previous code trying to update it from a previous game or something. And we can replace it with the new code. And so our voting script will work. I just want to add the extra effect of the rotating UI gradient, and we're just going to get run service, and then we're going to get a variable speed, which is how fast it's going to rotate, and then we're going to use run service .heartbeat, and we're going to get our selected border, and we're going to get the UI gradient that's inside of it, which is this right here, and we're going to make its rotation plus the speed, so it's just going to keep increasing its rotation. So we can test this out. If we go play, you'll see that we'll load into our game, and we'll just can wait for the intermission to end. We see we have the 3 different games we can choose from. These are the images I got, and I'm going to just choose Lava Rising. And you can see that the gradient spins. It was there for just a little bit, and we're now on to Lava Rising. And you can see that I choose Crazy Colors again as 1 vote, and it's been chosen. And so you can see I have a local server with 3 players, and we get the same GUI. I can choose Crazy Colors on here, and I'll just choose Tile Dash here and then Tile Dash on this one. So this one's going to beat Crazy Colors because it has 2 votes instead of 1. And we can just play the game like normal. And so now that we have the voting done, I want to fix our spleef game a little bit so it won't take forever to load. We're first going to add some new variables, which we're going to have game model, which is just going to be our script.game model. And we're going to have our tile size, which is just going to be our game model. And then we're just going to find the first tile we can and get its size because they're all the same size. So if we just get one of them and we get that size, then we're good. And we're also going to have running, which is going to be equal to false because our spleef game is not running. And how we're basically going to optimize this is instead of cloning the spleef game again and again and then adding a bunch of connections to all the different parts when they get touched, we're just going to reuse the same model so we don't have to keep cloning it, which can take a while to load. And so that's why we're getting the size right here so we can return them back to their normal size and stuff like that. And we don't need to clone this, so we can just remove this whole line right here because we're just going to reuse our same model over and over. And we're also going to grab this right here when we make the lava kill you untouched. We don't need to do that every time, we just need to do that once. So I'm going to copy that from the bottom or the middle, and I'm going to paste it right here because that only needs to happen once. And I'm also going to create a new variable called local hit tiles, and this is going to keep track of all the tiles that have been hit so we can restore them back to their normal previous version. And then we're also going to do something a little different with our spawn point. We're going to make it a variable, and we're going to actually parent it to the workspace first to make sure that it loads before anything else, because that's really important. We don't want players falling through it before the game has started. And then we're also just going to task.wait, which will wait 1 frame, so this will be enough time to load it in. If not, for some reason, you can always increase it to just like 0.1, and that should fix it if it's not loading in time. And then after that, then we load in the model so all the tiles can load in. But we just want to make sure that this is the priority before we load all of this in. And then we need to change this because this is a big reason that it took forever to load, is because we went through each and every tile and we also did test.wait. We went through every tile and made a touch connection for all of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this out of here. We're going to change it a little bit so we only have to run it once. I'm going to bring it up here. So I'm first going to get rid of this because we don't need the test.wait. And I'm also going to get rid of this right here when we're checking to see if it's tweening. And instead of using that attribute tweening to check if the tile's been hit or not, we are just going to use table.find and look inside of hit tiles to see if the tile's in there. And if it is in there, then we know it's already been hit. And then after that, we're going to insert into the table our tile so it can't get hit twice. And we're also going to check to see if our game is running. And if it's not running, then we're returning because we don't want the tiles being activated if the game isn't running. And because we're going to be reusing the same game model, we do not want to be destroying this. Instead, we want to get our tile and we want to set its transparency to 1. And we also want to make its can collide equal to false after our animation has already played. So this will work the exact same as if it got deleted, but it's still there in reality. And also, I had this line for debugging. You can keep it if you want, but I'm just going to delete it. And again, because we're reusing this, we don't want to destroy the spawn. We're just going to do some coding to get rid of it while it's still there. And so we do that by, we first make running equal true. So then when our game starts, players will be able to activate the tiles. And then we also want to get the spawn transparency. So we want to keep the same transparency as the spawn was before it goes invisible. So we just store that inside a variable, but then we want to make its transparency equal to 1. We want to make the can collide equal to false so they can fall through it. And then we want to parent it back into the game model because up here it was in the workspace. We just need to put it back to where it was so we can use it again. And also above our basic ending, we just need to set running to false. So the tiles can't be activated once the game is ended. And instead of destroying our game model, we can just set its parent to our script because we can use it later. And now we're going to use a coroutine.wrap. So our game's going to be ending, but we still want this to run while our game's ending. And we're going to let the main game continue while we're resetting all of the tiles. But we're going to go through all of our hit tiles and reset them back to their normal state by setting their size to the tile size, setting their transparency to 0 so they're fully visible, and the can collide back to true. And then we need to clear our table, the hit tiles table, because now that everything's reset, we just want to prepare for when the spleef gets run again. So we just clear everything from our hit tiles table. And then we make the spawn points transparency to its normal transparency and its can collide back to true. And all of this should reset our game so it can be used again without having a super long loading time or anything like that. And also up here when we're teleporting our players, we can't use game model.spawn anymore. We just have to use spawn point because there is no spawn point in the game model. It's now inside the workspace, so just use the variable. And one error that also needs to be fixed is if the players are playing as R15 and not R6, they can actually just spam jump and they can avoid activating the tiles. So how we fix this is at the top of our spleef script, we're going to have a minus height variable. This is how many studs we're going to lower their hip height by. And this is going to make them a little bit shorter, which basically allows them to always touch the tile and not be able to like barely miss it. And what we're going to do with that variable is we're going to go through all the players in our game with our players variable that we make right here, and we're going to get the humanoid and we're going to get their hip height and minus that by the minus height, and that should make it where they will always touch the tiles. And then after our game ends and we run _g basic ending, we're going to go through that same variable that we made and we're going to check if the character still exists, and if it does, we're going to get the humanoid, the hip height, and we're going to plus it by the amount that we minused it by. And this should prevent anyone from being able to spam jump and just avoid tiles. And if it isn't enough, you can increase this number, but I found 0.4 to work just fine. So I'm loading up a server with 3 players, and we can see the animation is ending, and I'm going to choose spleef. All the players can choose what they want. Just vote for spleef. Once it ends, we'll be able to test how long it loads. So vote has been over, spleef has been chosen. We already are put in. It didn't take that long to load, and it'll also work perfectly fine. So game's starting, and you can see that the tiles work fine. It's going to end once those 2 players die. And I'm going to vote for it again, so we can see that it reuses the same game and it re-puts tiles all back in place again. So we loaded back again and didn't take that long, and we also have all the tiles back in place. And now we can make our new capture the flag minigame. So I'm going to put these back in here, and I'm also going to put a new module script, and we're going to call this capture the flag. So for our script, we get a sword model, which is going to be slightly edited so that the players can't kill their own teammates. Then we also get debris service. We get the color for the blue team, for the red team, the preparation time they have, which it's a little low because I was testing, and then round time, which is how long the game will last and how long they have to capture the other flag. Now, like the sword up here, like I said, it's going to be slightly edited. So if you just want to use the one I'm using, go to the description, grab the capture the flag assets, and in there you'll get the game model, the classic sword, and a flagged marker. Now, the classic sword is pretty much a normal sword like we used in the sword fight game, except I added a small amount of code in the sword script down at the bottom right here before we kill a player. I check to see if the character that's being killed has the same team attribute as the player who is trying to kill them. And if it's true, then we just return. So if you're using a different item rather than a sword, or like if you have a gun or something, just make sure that you have this line of code right before you're killing the player so they can't kill their teammates. And for the map, what you're going to need in the map, what's necessary, is a folder called flags with a blue and a red flag, with each flag having a hitbox. The other thing is just for design, but having a hitbox called hitbox is what you need for each flags. You're going to need another folder called markers, and this is going to help players know who's a part of their team and who's on the enemy team. You're going to have a folder or a model called walls, and this is going to be deleted once the game starts so players can rush and try to attack the other players, but these will stay before the game starts. Then the other last things that you need is going to be the blue spawn and the red spawn, which is just going to spawn the teams where they need to spawn. Everything else you can add whatever you want and make it look how you want, but those are the things that you're going to need. And the last thing that you get in the assets pack is this flagged marker right here, and you can see that it's just a little marker with a little flag icon, and what this is going to do is it's going to be colored to the flag color, and whoever has taken a flag is going to have this marker on them. So if a blue team got the red flag, they're going to have this marker on them while they're trying to get back, so players know who to target. But once again, you can use your own stuff. Just make sure you have a sword or a weapon, a map with the necessary assets, and a marker. And so when our game gets run, we're going to need to set it up by cloning the game model, putting it into workspace, and we're also going to have an empty table for all the swords that we give to the players so we can delete them later. We're also going to have full empty tables for red team and blue team. We're also going to have an empty table for the death connections that are going to be in our game, because we're going to need to connect the players to a function every time they die so we can respawn them, give them a gun, and spawn them where they need to go, and disconnect them afterwards. Then we also have the variable local switch, which this is going to keep switching between true and false so that we can have half the players on red team, half the players on blue team. It's just going to keep alternating. Then we're going to go through all the players in our game. We're going to see if they have the attribute AFK enabled or if they don't have a character. And if any of these are true, we're just going to continue because they're not able to play the game. And so now that the player is able to play our game, we're going to get the root of the player, and we're also going to set the character's parent to the in-game folder so we know they're in the game. We're going to set the switch to the opposite of itself so it keeps going true, false, true, false. We're going to set the spawn CF, the color, and the team to nil, and these are values that we're going to decide in these if statements, and then we can use these when we're respawning them and when we're setting them up. And also down here, we check to see if the switch is true, then we're going to add them to red, and if the switch is false, we're going to add them to blue. So if we need to add them to red, we insert them into the red team. We get their color, which is equal to the red color. We get the spawn C-frame, which is the new game.redspawn.cframe, and we just make their team name red because they're red. And we do the same thing for blue, but just put everything that's blue. The blue team, blue color, blue spawn, and the name of the team. And so now that we've decided their team, we need to create our on-death function so we can respawn them with their weapons and such. So we first create our function, and we have this argument called first, and what we do is if this is not the first time we're running this function, then we're going to do these things. Because some of the things we do is in our swords table, we look for the sword with our user ID, and we parent it to nil, but we haven't given them a sword yet, so this will cause an error. And also our player hasn't actually died yet, so if we were to run character appearance loaded wait, this would wait until we actually died, which we haven't yet. And then again, if we were to try to access the sword and parent it back into the backpack, then it would cause another error. So we run this function and we give it true, so these things don't run for the first time only. But what we're going to do every time we run this function is we're going to get the character's parent and parent them back into the in-game folder, which we actually already did. So this could be inside the not first if statement, but it doesn't really matter. And we're also going to set the team attribute of our character to the team that we've been given, so either blue or red. And we're also going to create our team highlight, which this is going to be one of those outlines that you see in some games. It's going to be on the player. It's either going to be red or blue, depending on what team they're on. And we're basically going to create this highlight. We're going to put it into the markers folder, and then we're going to set its adornee to the player.character. So even though it's parented to the markers folder, it's still going to appear as if it was parented on the character. We're going to set its depth mode to occluded, so you won't be able to see players through walls. Then we're going to set the outline color to the color, so either blue or red. And we're going to set the fill transparency to 1, so there's only going to be an outline, not a fill color. And the last thing we do with our player is we get its humanoid root part, and we set its C frame to the spawn C frame, so either the blue spawn or the red spawn. And then we set the death cons with the index of whatever index we're on and whatever player we're looping through. And we set that index to be an event when the player dies, and this only happens once. So it's kind of recursive. Basically, the player's going to die, and then it's going to reconnect the function, and then this will run again, and then if they die again, it's going to reconnect. And it keeps going and going, so we can continuously give them what they need when they die and respawn. And now we need to script our flags so they can be captured. And we're going to get a winner variable, the blue carrier and the red carrier. The carrier variables are going to be who is carrying the flag. So if someone captured the blue flag, that's what they're going to be. They're going to equal this variable. And then this winner variable is going to equal nil until someone has won the game. And then we also get flag connections, which is an empty table. And this is going to contain the 2 hit connections or the touched connections that are going to be on the hitbox of the flag. Because you can see right here, we're going to go through the flags in our game, which is just going to be 2, and we're just going to insert into the table with the index the touched connection, and we're going to connect it to a function, and then we can script what happens when someone tries touching the flag. So if the flag gets touched, we need to make sure it's a humanoid touching it. So that's what we do right here. And we also need to make sure that the player touching it is not dead. And if they have health that's equal to or less than 0, then we just return. But we need to know if this is a teammate touching the flag or if this is one of the enemies. So if the person who touched us getting their team attribute is equal to our flag's name, that's why it's important to make sure the name of the flags is the name of the teams that we have up here. But if it is equal to that, then we know that this is the team that's touching the flag, and if it's not, then the enemy is trying to capture the flag. And so if the team flag has been touched, then we need to check to see if the winner is not equal to nil. And if it is not equal to nil, then we return, because that means someone else has already won and this is just running after. But if no one has won yet, then we need to check to see if our the flag being touched is red and the blue carrier is equal to the person who is touching the flag. So the person who got the blue flag came back and touched their flag again. Then we know that the winner is going to be red because they successfully captured the flag. And then it's the same thing but for blue. If the flag being touched is the blue flag and the red carrier is equal to the person touching the blue flag, then we know that blue won. And if none of this is true, then we just return. But if this is an enemy touching the flag, then we need to set the flag.parent to nil, so it's no longer in the workspace. And then we need to make a new marker to tell the other players that someone has captured the flag. And we're going to clone our marker in our script. We're going to parent it to the new game.markers and then set its adornee to the hit.parent humanoid root part. So it will appear as if it was parented to that. And then we're also going to slow down the player who captured the flag to 11 walk speed, just so it's a little harder to win and the players will have to help protect their flag carrier, and it gives the opposing team a chance to try to get their flag back. And we're also going to color our marker right here, and we're going to check to see what the name of the flag is, and if it's red, then we're going to color the marker's background to red, and we're also going to do that with the blue one. And we're also going to set the red carrier to be the person who captured the flag and the blue carrier to whoever captured it. And now if the carrier dies, we need to check for that and put the flag back to where it needs to be. So we're going to put into the death connections with the index of basically however many things are inside of death connections, and then just +1, so we're not replacing any other connections. And we're going to equal that to when our carrier dies, and we're going to only use once because we're just going to reconnect anytime someone grabs the flag again. And we're going to reset the parent of the flag back into new game.flags so it's back on the map. And we're going to destroy the marker because now they don't have the flag anymore. And if the flag was red, then we're just going to set the red carrier to nil, and if it's blue, we're going to set it to nil so the values are correctly updated. So after we've prepared everything, we're going to start our preparation countdown so players have some time to know what their goal is, and we're going to tell them that they need to capture the other flag and that the swords will be given in however many seconds are left. And then we're going to begin our game by destroying the walls. We're going to give swords to everyone by looping through everyone who is in the game, and we're going to clone our sword. We're going to parent it to the character, and we're also going to insert into the swords table our new sword, giving it the key of whatever the user ID is from the player by using get player from character. And then we're going to count down using our round time, and our game is going to end. No one has captured the flag, but if the winner is not equal to nil, then we're going to break our countdown early because someone has won the game, and then we can just continue. And then after our game ends, whether someone wins or whether it's a tie, we're going to disconnect our death connections and our flag connections by going through each of the tables, checking if the connection is still there, and then just disconnecting it. And we're also going to destroy all the swords by going through all the swords, then just destroying all the swords. And now we gotta tell everyone who won, so if the winner is still equal to nil, then it's a tie, so we're gonna tell them that no team has won. Else, we're going to say that the team, and then connect the winner, has won the game. So it'll be like team blue or team red has won. And if the winner was blue, then we're gonna set this winner variable to the blue team, and if it was red, then we're gonna set it to the red team, and then we're just gonna loop through the team of players and give each player in that team a win, because they won the game. And if there is still the red carrier, or if there's the blue carrier, we need to reset their walk speed. So we're just going to set their walk speed to game.starterplayer.character walk speed. So whatever we have set in the starter player in here, we can just, it's going to reset their walk speed back to that for blue and for red. And we're going to wait 4 seconds, let the players read who won, and we're going to destroy our new game. So I want to start up a local server with 3 players, but I'm first going to go to minigames, and I'm going to remove minigames until we only have 3 left, just so it's guaranteed that we get capture the flag. So we got sword fight and tile dash and capture the flag, but I'm going to start it up and we're going to vote for it and we're going to test it out. So you can see I've loaded in, we got the different ones to choose from. Oh, and I did forget to add a thumbnail for capture the flag, so I'm going to do that. So you can see I'm now loading up in our game. We got our 3 players. We can vote for whatever map we want. We're going to go for the center one, which is our capture the flag game, and you can see that capture the other team's flag while protecting your own. And we got 2 on red, we got 1 on blue, so we'll just demonstrate. I'll run over with him so you can see that I've made it. I'm gonna kill player 2. They're gonna die and they're gonna respawn, but let's say I quickly get the flag over. I need to defend myself, so I go and catch up to him, kill him. Now our flag respawns and I can protect it. I can't capture my own flag. We also can't kill each other because we're on the same team. And yeah, we can kind of just do that. And I'll also end the game by capturing the red player's flag. So now that I've captured the red player's flag, I'm going to bring it back to my place and we'll be able to win the game. So I'm pretty slow, but I've managed to outwit the team, and now blue team is 1. Now blue team is 1. I got a point. And there we go. Thanks so much for watching, and leave your ideas for videos in the comments below, and I'll see ya. And huge thank you to all the supporters on the Patreon: Jim Barry, It's Isaiah, R. Jackson, Kitty Dragus, Bradley's World, Inter, Noe Bernard, Tutu YZXS, Mystic Business, Raoul, Wesley Kramer.